Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and today we have got not one awesome guest for you, but two awesome guests for you. I love the backstory of how they've partnered up to create a business that serves really something that is their own needs that they identified in their own lives, and they've brought it to the marketplace to help so many other people connect with events and brands and teams and performers and entertainers that they enjoy. There's so much that we're going to hear about their backstory and their insights and their business approach. So we're all going to learn from them. Let me tell you about both of our guests. Their names are Christina Ness and Justin Chu. Together, Christina and Justin are the co-founders of Evenigo, which is a platform that allows fans of brands, artists, or influencers to subscribe to their external calendars so they don't miss out on their favorite promos, drops, or ticket on sale events. The pair met while they were working together at Activision Blizzard, and after missing out on an important ticket pre-sale due to manual error, they decided to start their own company. One thing that I love about their business website is it points out you check your calendar 10 times per day. Why the heck should we ever be missing out on the things in life that we're looking forward to? I'm actually going to argue we check our calendars way more than 10 times a day. And for me personally, if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist in my life. So they're bringing a really powerful solution to the marketplace. I'm excited to chat with them today. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Christina Ness and Justin Chu. All right, Christina and Justin, I'm so excited that the two of you are here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you. We're so excited to be here.
Heck yeah. I'm excited because not only do I think your business has a cool backstory, but I think that it's such an powerful and important thing that when I saw your solution, I'm just like, gosh, why are we not all using something like this? Because we all literally need it. I said it in the teaser. If it's not in my calendar, it's not in my life. But before we get to the good stuff about your business, first things first, take us beyond the bios. Christina, I'm going to kick it to you first. Ladies first. Talk to us about who you are, what your background is, and how all roads led to you and Justin doing something really cool together.
Sure, absolutely. So definitely an interesting story for me. I always joke that I'm like the quasi true Hollywood story. I had worked at Target headquarters in Minneapolis, Minnesota, got laid off, and my cousin was like, let's go ahead and start a business. You can come out to LA. If all else fails, you get a few months by the beach. It'll be fun. Spoiler alert, it was not my favorite thing, to be honest. But through that, I was sidelining at some other apps to pay my bills. And a lot of the investors and advisors were sort of high-powered entertainment and media execs. And so the true Hollywood story, I met a guy at an investor dinner, found out that he had worked with Andreessen Horowitz as an investor and also as an advisor in residence there. And I was like, hey, I'd love to meet with you. I'd love to learn from you. Can we have a coffee or something? He was like, oh yeah, sure. So we set a date, never set a time, followed up a couple more times. And then finally I was like, okay, last time I'll follow up. And so followed up with him one last time, and I get an email back immediately that says, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I owe you a coffee or a dinner or something. Can you meet me at this time on this date at the London Hotel in the bar in West Hollywood? And I was like, all right, this is going to be super creepy or this is going to be super cool. I will see you there. And we got there, and it turned out he was actually late finishing up a meeting, and he goes, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I have a dinner after this. It's with the COO of Happy Madison, so Adam Sandler's company. And he goes, do you just want to come? And I was, I think, 23 at the time, so I was like, yes, I do. So we went to a nice dinner out. I found out that he had done a lot of stuff in advertising, managed a number of stars, had worked and done a lot with WME, and that this guy was actually starting his own agency. And so by the end of the night, I was like, I don't know what this guy does, but I want to do it too. And so he dropped me off at the valet, and true Hollywood story, I was like, hey, I don't usually do this, but can I work for you? And he goes, yeah. You're going to work really hard, but you're going to have a lot of fun. And so worked with him for about 3.5 years, worked with his agency for a while, and then we partnered with Simon Fuller, so the creator of Idol. We brought a pop band to life called Now United, so did a lot of the funding and the sponsorships for that. Then went over to a company called Dun & Dusted that specializes in large-scale live, and they are just the coolest people you will ever meet who do the coolest things in the entire world. So I was grateful to have that opportunity to work with them and to kind of run their experiential department, which was also a startup. So that was really interesting to me. And then decided it was time for a change, figured games could be a really fun avenue, and then ended up at Blizzard. And so that's how I met Justin. So we worked together at Activision Blizzard doing a lot of the esports communication for the teams.
Cool. And for me, I think I had a typical career-driven based background, but one common theme has always been building. So I started my career in consulting at Nielsen and then Deloitte, which is always about like finding solutions for problems that clients had. I then joined Disney in their Parks Division strategy group. So from there, it's like identifying new businesses to pursue or ways to grow existing businesses. And finally, as Christina mentioned, we were both at Activision Blizzard in the esports division. And that's where I actually got my first taste of, what it's like to kind of be in a startup, because it is a new industry that we were trying to build at Activision Blizzard, which is a larger parent organization. And here, getting that first taste, I love the ability to wear many different hats and trying to build up that new industry in a sense. So that when that opportunity did come to an end, right, it just got me excited to, want to actually build something for myself. And then we can save her that later in the podcast. We'll tell you the story of how we came together on this idea. But it's just like, why not just try something totally new? This is my opportunity to actually build something for ourselves that we needed, and actually be our own bosses in a sense, and not be in the corporate grind the entire time.
Yeah, I love those overviews, especially because I feel like it epitomizes so many elements and ingredients of what it means to be an entrepreneur. Christina, you talk about seeing an opportunity and just asking the question that way too many people are afraid to ask. And Justin, you use the word of building. I would argue that all of us entrepreneurs, it's something that is innately in us, is we enjoy building. We love the process. We don't just love the finished product. And hearing the fact that both of your stories came together is really cool. But I love transitioning into the business talk, because having lived in Los Angeles, I know the power of the entertainment industry, and both of you were working at an incredible company. Activision Blizzard is something that people all over the world, I mean, especially in the gaming world, know so many things about this company. Talk to us about how the two of you, sitting in these awesome jobs that a lot of millennials would be like, you guys, this is so much fun, you must love your work, but the two of you linked up and you said, but we can also build something cool and something that can really positively impact the entertainment industry. Talk to us about that beginning.
Yeah, so that was an interesting transition for us. It was really funny because when Justin and I started working together, interesting fact, actually, funny enough, I interviewed first at Activision Blizzard for Justin's job, did not get it, and then ended up working with him. And I always say that that's like, we were meant to work together. We were meant to do this, meant to be friends, all of that. And when we started working together, it was always kind of this running joke where I would say, Justin, we should start a business together. And he'd be like, no, like, I don't do that. I don't want to do that. And kind of the longer we went together, I was like, Justin, we should really start a business together. And he was like, no, I won't do that. That's too risky. That's just not who I am. And I was like, everything has a risk. And then funny enough, about a month later, Activision Blizzard did a big liquidation of their esports team. And both of our jobs went in that. And we met a few times for lunch, and both kind of hadn't found anything that really felt like our right fit. As you mentioned, Activision is a great company, so we definitely had some good opportunities, but just not the right ones. And then Justin reached out in November with a text that I never thought I'd get. And it said, hey, I have a startup idea. Can we hop on a phone call tomorrow? And he ran the original idea for Evenigo by me, and I was like, this is awesome. Let's do it. And from that day, we have just really kept going, kind of hammering away on the idea.
Yeah, and then keep in mind, like, my entire background, as I was mentioning in the beginning, right, has been the corporate grind. And my background is always like, oh, stability, right? Like, startups isn't the way to go. And that's why every time Christina asks me, like, hey, let's do something, I'm always like, no, I'm too risk averse, right? This doesn't make sense. So then when our jobs were eliminated in that liquidation, right, it's like, okay, here potentially is my chance to, do what Christina was like encouraging us to do together. And so when we came up with the idea, right, it's like the first person I thought about was Christina. And then like the fact that, we're very complementary in what we can cover, right? I think finding a partner is really important in any startup too. And the fact that we cover different aspects and what we're like, I think it's like left brain, right brain, right? Like we cover the entire brain combined. And I think that's a really important aspect of our partnership too.
Yeah, really cool insights from the two of you. Christina, I'm going to go here because you said the words original idea of Evenigo. What was the original idea? Has it evolved? Has it changed? Justin, it sounds like you were thinking about it for quite some time, and then I'm sure the two of you refined it together. Walk us through the building process of what Evenigo is today and how the heck you got there business-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the core pillars of the business have essentially remained the same, because what we want to do is have social calendars, discovery, and then also connections for brands and for people as a part of our business. But I think at the beginning when we did this, we thought mostly all about the brand side. So we were looking a lot at the B2B side versus building the business to business versus business to consumer side. And I think where the shift has taken place is we realized that people like to collaborate and they like to spend a lot of time together, and they don't really have a place to do that where they can enter in a bunch of things simultaneously without, I guess, interrupting somebody else's calendar. And we were like, what if we could fix that? For example, my girls group had a notes app where we would just share different activities to it. And we were like, we could just have that on Evenigo as a collab calendar, and then everybody's invited. And that's where the social piece came in. So we sort of started to direct towards that, partially because we build the community and people get excited, but also to support the brands that we hope will come on board.
Yeah, I want to go here because, Justin, I know that this idea was kicking around in your head, but obviously it plays a role in your business's beginnings, which is missing out on a ticket pre-sale. Talk to us about that origin story.
Yeah, so I've always been fascinated by what the calendar can do for you. I'm a huge calendar junkie, and the fact that you can stay organized and productive with it, I think, was really important. But the fact was, I always thought there's something missing with all the current calendar offerings on the market. And then so what you're alluding to Brian, is my wife really wanted to go watch Beyonce during her Renaissance tour. So I wanted to be a good husband and surprise her with tickets, right? So I did some research. I looked up when the pre-sales were starting, and I added it to my calendar. So when the day came, right, I clicked on my calendar. I went to the site, and then to my dismay, right, the pre-sale was over. I entered it incorrectly in my calendar, and then it was a very sad moment for me. But it was also an aha moment, right? This is what actually can make calendars better. Why can't we share calendars? Why can't brands create calendars, right? And do what LinkedIn has done for resumes in a sense, right? If Ticketmaster or Beyonce had a public calendar, I could have just subscribed to their calendar, and then I wouldn't have this user error in the first place, and actually gotten those tickets for my wife. So long story short, if Beyonce is actually listening to this podcast, I hope you make a calendar on Evenigo, and then from there, right, everybody could subscribe and not miss out on her key beats.
Yeah, I love that backstory, especially because, Justin, it's you not only owning your mistake, but making up for it to save husbands everywhere. So I love that origin story. And yes, you hope that Beyonce gets her calendar up on Evenigo. I hope she's listening to this episode. So we're all united there. But both of you have mentioned this, and I want to go here strategically, business-wise in our conversation, which is there's two sides of this coin. There's the brands. We'll just lump them in as brands. Obviously, entertainers, sports teams, events, local events, all this blend of, let's just say, brands. But then there's also the people that we want to be connected to them. For me, I mean, the Boston Celtics calendar, it is such a pain for 82 games a season to make sure that I remember when the Celtics are playing. And so there's so much that both sides of the coin want us to know about each other and want us to have that in our calendar. Where is it that you guys view strategically your business placed there? Obviously, you serve both sides of the coin, but I'm curious to tap into your strategic minds of, hey, here's the benefit that we provide to brands and events. Here's the benefit that we provide to customers. How do you go about balancing those two?
Yeah, so I think from a brand's perspective, right, there's so many different avenues out there to market your events, right? The Boston Celtics, for example, as you mentioned, right? They can post on Instagram. They have their website. They have all these different ways of messaging it to the user. But this is where it comes together from the brand side and the user perspective. They can message on Instagram, they can do YouTube ads, TV ads, etc. But it's fleeting in nature, and it's also a pay-to-play market space, right? You have to pay to get those ads posted on Instagram from a perspective. Nothing is ever added to, as we mentioned, right, at the top of this podcast, something that you check 10 times a day anyway, your calendar. So that's where we come in to bring together the brands and the consumer's perspective of it. if the Boston Celtics had a Evenigo calendar, right, they can add all 82 games onto the calendar. Brian, you can subscribe to that calendar, and those 82 games will be added to your personal calendar. So you don't need to go back and dig through, on this day, when is the Boston Celtics actually playing? It's like, it's on my calendar. It's there. I just click on my event, and then I can watch it wherever it is from that perspective. Or buy tickets to actually go to the event itself too, right? So that's where the two sides come together with Evenigo, right? We're consolidating everything into one place, but also making it a seamless experience for consumers to discover, but also start attending those events because it's already on your calendar.
Yeah, one thing that I learned really early on in my own entrepreneurial journey. So when I was 19, 16 years ago, I started my first business, and it was a soccer blog. And I remember I was so excited. I was writing 30 articles about English soccer every single day. And to me, my customer, the consumer of what I was doing, was obviously the readers. To me, I was just like, they are the ones that I do all of this work for. When one day I woke up and I realized, and I was in college at the time, and I remember my professor talked to me about, no, your customers, whoever's writing the check, whatever your source of revenue is. And that's when I realized, well, my customers obviously are the advertisers of my website. The consumers might be the readers. Talk to us from a strategic perspective about that, because I feel like most entrepreneurs, we don't think about these things because we don't want to put people into categories of this is my revenue, this is the consumers. But obviously it's important for us to consider that, especially when, Justin, to piggyback off your point, you do bring value on both sides of the equation. I think that's really powerful. So give us some insights into the business strategy behind that and how you two view these sides of the coin.
Yeah, so I can kind of answer this one. I feel like we really view it as a connection, and we view it as a wanted connection. Fans are not going to subscribe to calendars of something that they don't like. For example, they're not going to want to get alerts from a brand that they don't like. For me, for example, I love Tarte makeup, and they do certain sales or product drops specific times of the year, and I would love to catch those, but I might not want a different brand. So we see it as a really great direct targeting play, but also a way to make connections with people who already want your stuff and are going to get really excited. So it's not necessarily just a revenue play. It's how can you build excitement, and how can you build connections? And then also, how can you fill a need of somebody that's already there, something they're already looking for?
Yeah, it's really cool hearing you talk about it from the product perspective, Christina, because I'm extrapolating into my own life, and Allbirds Shoes. That is a company that I absolutely love. We all see their ads on Facebook and Instagram, and they always have limited release color drops. They advertise, hey, in March, we're going to be dropping this. If it was on my calendar, it would build actually further excitement, and they'd have that direct line. Justin, to your point earlier about if I subscribe to them, that's better exposure than paying Facebook or Instagram for it. There's no more intimate place in my personal life than my calendar. If it's there, I'm going to be paying attention to it. So I think that's really powerful. Talk to us about the building of it, because a lot of listeners tuning in are going to say, you two bit off a big chunk of a project to solve this problem for, because how do you integrate these things? What does the back end look like? How do brands get their events on the calendars? How do subscribers get on there? Give us the lowdown on how this stuff actually works.
Yeah, this is a funny story between the fact of like having a partner and us having different ways of approaching things. I think how we first started off was we were like, okay, both of us don't know how to code, right? Like how can we actually build a tech company if we don't know how to code? And then it was like, okay, let's first try to find a third founder, a technical founder that can help us work with us on developing what this idea could look like. And we went on a Y Combinator co-founder matching, and then we talked to a lot of people, but we just never could find the right fit for that perspective. So it got to the point of what's like the entire time Christina's like, hey Justin, we should just maybe learn how to code and like actually do it ourselves. And I'm like, no, we have to get a founder. We don't know what we're doing. It's gonna take too long. If you want to jump in, Christina.
So then from there, he was like, we don't know what we're doing. We're going to take too long. And I was like, well, let's just give it a shot. My background wasn't necessarily in design, but one of my former bosses owned a dev studio. So I had a little bit of UI UX experience. We consulted a couple of friends who were developers, and both of them had brought up no-code platforms and using Figma. So from there, we went to using Figma, starting to design some of our initial app. designs, looking at some of the features that we thought we could have. And then we started going through the different no-code platforms. So we sort of did an evolution. We took a look at Wix, did that for like a small launch, just for a conceptual thing. Then we did Adalo, and then we went into Bubble, which is much more complex. So we sort of built up to what we were doing. But the two of us, I think, really kind of have that grit to figure stuff out. And we were just sort of at the point where we were like, well, if we can't find anybody, there has to be a way for us to do it ourselves. So whether it's no code, whether it's learning to code, there's got to be a way, and we're both problem solvers. So we moved it forward. And I think too, some of the advice that I would give anybody who is starting a business is like, if you don't know how to do it, you can find it on YouTube or Udemy for probably under $15 to figure it out.
Yeah,
and I would say that progression is actually really important. Is in the fact that like we went through Wix, then Adalo, then Bubble, because I do think each of those programs have their own pros and cons. But I would say that was like the complexity journey as well, right? Wix is more easy, and from our experience, Wix was easier than Adalo. Adalo was easier than Bubble, and we had to go through that progression to become comfortable with what Bubble could offer and the complexities that allowed us to build with that program. If we didn't start with like Wix or Adalo, right, like we'll be in over ahead with Bubble from that perspective. And the fact that, as Christina mentioned, we started with Figma in the first place. We first developed the wireframe, so give us a framework to build off of as we were designing and building up the app in the first place.
Yeah, that's actually incredible. I'll be honest. Obviously, I've gone so much through all the incredible things that you do with your business, and this is a part of your story. I didn't realize that the two of you figured it out along the way. And Christina, I love that shout out. You can learn pretty much everything these days on YouTube. I'm glad that you both arrived at Bubble. It's such a powerful no-code platform. Here we are, three of us who don't have a coding background, and we've all built stuff there. I just built, for my own sake, a Bubble app that taps into Yelp's API. And I can keep track of all the coffee shops that I visited. It just adds it to my personal database. And that's just all from YouTube. So I think you two are such a shining example of how that can be figured out. And tech is not a barrier, but it is very cool that you did go down that route of looking for a technical co-founder, which leads me to ask you two about your partnership, because a business partner, I would argue it's almost as intimate as a marriage, because you two have to talk money. You have to have a lot of difficult conversations together. Talk to us about the dynamics of being business partners and how you figured out along the way to most optimally work together.
Yeah, so I think this one we'll probably both add on. But Justin and I were really fortunate in that we worked together for 2 years before we decided to start a business together. And I think a lot of that was having a really good, just working relationship, really opposite thought trains, and then also focusing a lot on the other person's intention. We definitely do get annoyed sometimes, or we step on each other's toes. But I think one of the things that anchors us all the time is we think to ourselves, okay, is this person trying to hurt me, or are they trying to further the vision? And usually it's that person's trying to do something good. Maybe they're not saying in the way that we would like to receive it, but they're doing something good. But I think also working on a team so closely together for 2 years really helped us identify the other person's strengths and weaknesses and helped us find a balance there. And it helped us to grow into friendship. I think another thing that I love about our relationship is it started off professional. So it started off very professional. It was always kind of working together. I think sometimes I see it as something that can be really great if somebody goes with their best friend that they've known since they were 5 to build a business. But for me, I actually really prefer the fact that we've always worked together, and that's always been part of our dynamic. We're best friends now. We talk all the time. We tell each other everything. But to your point, I feel like we had to grow into that, and we really built sort of a strong foundation with our working relationship before we built our personal relationships. And so we really learned to trust each other and build different ways to do that as we went along.
And what I would add to that is the fact that like we are very different individuals from that perspective. Yes. And I think that's really important that we come from our different backgrounds and different ways of thinking. So many times, right, that we would have a disagreement and then I'll be like, no, Christina, you're wrong. You're like, hey, we were doing it my way or the highway kind of stuff, right? And vice versa. And a lot of times, right, nobody's ever correct 100% of the times. I would say, even like counting on my, like thinking back, like 50% of the time, Christina is right. 50% of the time, I'm right. But we don't see it at the time because we always think we're always right ourselves. But you have to have that complementary mindset of like, hey, she's coming from a good perspective. She's bringing her background, which is different than mine. And that's okay, right? Like, I need to hear her perspective, how she thinks about stuff, and vice versa. And combined, we actually come up with a much better solution ultimately. Talking back to how we came up with all these different no code solutions, right? Like I really didn't want to do no code, but because Christina was able to convince me, like, hey, no code is the way without finding a co-founder, right? We're able to actually launch an MVP website, and we're on the way to launching a mobile app, which, as of this, podcast publishing, it'll be live on the App Store and Google Play Store, right? And then from that perspective, we want to be where we are today without Christina, and hopefully vice versa with me on the team.
Yeah,
definitely. We pull each other along.
I love those insights. As someone who I've had traditional, Christina, you talk about the childhood friend. I've had that type of business partner in a marketing agency that I founded after college. And now as someone who has a few businesses in my portfolio, I always am working with global teams. And I know that you two are in the same city, but really quick before we start talking about growth, because I'm so excited to tap into your growth minds and your strategic visionary minds. But before we get there, just for listeners who have always been worried about the dynamics of business partnership, what sort of tools do you two use? I'm a big junkie for Slack. You have already revealed to us that one of your biggest tools, obviously, from a structural perspective is Bubble. But what about team-wise? How do you always make sure that team continues to click?
Yeah, so I think for us, one of the things that's really important, two of the things, is consistency. So we find a time every single day to meet for either a phone call or a video call. And we typically don't miss that unless it's like a holiday or somebody's taking the day off. We do that pretty much every day. And then at the end of the day, we actually send each other recaps of what we've accomplished that day. And I think it really helps to keep the other person going, and it sort of starts a friendly competition. If Justin sends me something and it's like a laundry list of all the things he's done, I'm like, man, I've got to step my game up. And so it really kind of builds the camaraderie, builds the trust, and also keeps the momentum.
Yeah, really great insights. Also accountability. It's built-in accountability, and I absolutely love that. And as a fan of friendly competition, it sounds like you both spur each other on, whereas if Justin's getting a lot done, Christina, you want to also match or exceed that, and vice versa. So I think it's a really friendly and competitive in a good way environment. So huge kudos to you. It reflects in all the things that you're both building, but it begs me the question. I love what you two are up to. I love what you've built, and Justin, even hearing about the upcoming launch of the app, there's so much powerful stuff that you're both working on. And I just want to reiterate, because obviously this is a podcast, listeners can't necessarily see us right now, but I'm on your website. Your Discover feed, even as someone who I don't know what brands I want to connect with, I can say, I'm here in Tampa, Florida, show me the type of things that are going on. For me as a consumer, it's so helpful for me to start even finding and discovering new things. So you both clearly have a lot of cool features already built in, but I want to know, what's the plan to get this into the calendars of every single person? Because I think we all want it, but talk to us about those strategic visionary growth plans.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think how we want to think about it is it's definitely step by step, right? We definitely want this to be on everybody's calendar, but at the same time, right, it's going to take baby steps, and we build upon it. This is definitely a chicken and the egg problem of you need to have brands in order to have consumers, and consumers want to have brands in order before they join, kind of stuff. So one thing that we've been thinking about from a growth perspective is what is something that people will be using every single day outside of just purely discovering from that perspective. Let's create a very robust calendar where you can, plan events on it and plan meet and greets as well with your friends from that perspective. You see an event that you want to go to, for instance, as we talked about the Boston Celtics, right? They have tickets coming up. I'm going to invite my friends to it on our calendar as well. From there, we keep growing from that perspective. But the other aspect about it is what can the calendar do for you, right? Yes, right now we're talking about brands creating public calendars. And I will also, it'll be remiss of me to say, you as an individual can also create a public calendar to share with the world as well, right? If you're a huge Netflix junkie and you want to know when all the Netflix releases are, right? You have the power to create this public calendar yourself and invite the world to see, right? Or even your own events. Even Brian, yourself, or entrepreneur to entrepreneur, you can publish a public calendar for when all your podcasts are being published from that perspective. The idea is to grow this from that seed, and then as more people use it, right, the network effect builds up further and further from there.
Yeah, I love that. And Justin, you got my mind going a million miles a minute, because you're right. For podcasters, this is something that we're kind of at the mercy of all the podcast subscription apps. I'm at the mercy. Spotify very rarely will push notifications to our subscribers. It happens because Spotify's looking to expand their reach in the podcast game. They're not big players just yet, but you're right. Why am I going to wait for other platforms to make that splash? We have a loyal audience, and to Christina's point from earlier, if they love our brand and they want to tune into our podcast episodes, we can help remind them, hey, this is the episode that dropped today. So I really love those ideas and those insights. I also love hearing your passion, not only for the event side of your business, but also the business side of it. It just sounds like the two of you love that aspect. So I want to put you both on the spot here, entrepreneur to entrepreneur. What is it about the business side that either has been surprising to you, or it's something that you each have stepped into? Because coming from the 9-to-5 world, you kind of had projects that you were working on, you had a boss, but now you're both your own bosses, obviously together as a team. But what about the business aspect has surprised you, or something that you really enjoy?
Should I go for it, Christina?
Sure, I'll go ahead. I mean, I think what's really fun about working for yourself or working with a close friend is you do kind of have that flexibility. So you have the flexibility to work from different places, to go to different places. But I think something that a lot of people also underestimate, I always like to do a good one and a bad one, is outreach. That is really, really challenging. And I think one of the most important things people can do, and I've actually heard this on your podcast before, is to build a list and start building your connections and building your network. And I think that just takes time. So it's one of my favorite things, getting to know new people, but it definitely is something that I think a lot of people look at, whether it's sales or whether it's big businesses or CEOs, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so glamorous. This is awesome. I'm going to do this tomorrow and I'm going to be at the top. And it really is a ladder of just all kinds of different small tasks, and then building up those relationships. So once your stuff is ready and you can continually engage, then you can support them in a way that they need, but it's not an overnight conversion.
Yeah, and building off of your theme of good and bad, I think the good aspect of it is it's fun to do something new, right? Like, I'm learning so many new things when it comes to building on Bubble, and learning from Christina on design and wireframing, marketing, all this stuff, or content, right? Like, it's fun to do all these new stuff, and you see the impact that it creates for our business. That's really fun. On the bad side, I'll say, because it's just the two of us, right? There's a lot of nitty gritty stuff related to the business that isn't that glamorous. For instance, expense reports, right? Doing all these small manual tasks that are related to the business, right? Talking to lawyers from that perspective, getting the legal aspects, all set up, accounting, all that stuff, right? We have to worry about this stuff now. That's the less glamorous side, but it's definitely outweighed by the fact that we're building something together that hopefully the world sees value in and will join us on this journey.
Yeah, really well said. I love those entrepreneurial insights. I know that listeners so appreciate these parts of the conversation, and it's really cool because I always ask the same question at the end of episodes, and today we're going to get 2 pieces of advice and 2 takeaways, because I always ask, what's that one takeaway? We've talked about so many things, not only about the specifics of Evenigo and the way that your business actually works, and discovering events and being on people's calendars and how it helps brands. We talked about all that stuff, but also I just feel like you two offered us such transparency. And I love how much you've shared the way that your entrepreneurial minds think. So what's the one thing you want to leave listeners with? Knowing that they're at all different stages of their business journey, you two are in it, you're living it, you're creating something that has so much value across the board. So what's that one thing from each of you that you want to leave listeners with as they listen to today's episode?
Yeah, I think from my end, I would say the advice I would give, I think Steve Jobs said this, sorry if it's a misquote, but stay hungry and stay foolish. Because I think when people think they know it all, that's where they kind of plateau. If you think you know it all, or you don't stay hungry, you don't get excited about different things, it's really hard to move forward. And I think both of those things just help to propel you. So really just keep going, keep learning.
And then for me, my piece of advice would be authentic to yourself. And what I mean by being authentic is not because I don't know how to code, I'm not going to do any coding, right? I'm not going to learn. What I mean by authentic is because we didn't know how to code, and right now we're doing a no-code platform, right? Our messaging to people who are looking to download our app, it's we are going to make mistakes, right? But it's okay, right? This is an MVP. This is a beta build, right? Like, there's going to be some bugs, and that's okay. Like, join us for this journey. Like, build with us in a sense, right? Publicly, from that perspective. So, be authentic to yourself. Like, people are going to make mistakes, and that's okay. But we're going to always get better. We're going to keep learning. And then, hopefully, if I could do a final plug as well, right? Like, as I mentioned, like, our app is going to be on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store when this podcast launch. Like, as I was alluding to, like, please join us for this journey, right? We hope that we can change the calendar experience 1% at a time. And we definitely know that, our overall vision is not there yet, but it will get there with your help. So we'd love to hear your feedback. Reach out to us at our social handles on Evenigo Official on Instagram or TikTok. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, I love that. Both of those pieces of advice that you left us with. And Justin, I'm going to give you guys the stage once again, because I'm going to publicly say that I actually hope that the entire entrepreneur to entrepreneur community all around the world, I feel like we take such an interest and we genuinely love the guests that come on and all of your businesses. Listeners know we're super proactive and picky about who we invite onto the show. We actually go after the companies that we see you doing cool things. And Christina and Justin, in the case of what you both are doing with Evenigo, I think it's incredible. I think it's much needed for both sides of the coin that we talked about today. So listeners, I invite you to be fans of the work that they're doing and how transparently they're sharing it. Justin, to your point of being authentic and building in public along the way, I think it's so powerful, and we have each other. Rising tide lifts all boats. It's one of our founding principles behind this show. So drop those links on us once again. Where the heck should listeners go knowing when this episode airs? By the time it airs, listeners, they're going to tell you right now where to go to be part of the Evenigo revolution and get those calendars getting you excited instead of just seeing all the meetings that we have lined up.
So go check out evenigo.com. You'll be able to access our responsive web, and then you'll be able to download our app as well.
And then you can reach out to us on our Instagram and TikTok at Evenigo Official.
Yes, and listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find those links down below in the show notes, wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode. You can find Evenigo in the App Store, on the internet. Christina dropped that link, evenigo.com. You'll also find it down below, so you can click right on through, and it's so clear. When you go to their website, you'll see, I'm a brand looking to create public calendars, or I'm a user looking to follow brands, or if you don't know what the heck you want to do, you'll find an entire tab for discovery, so you can start finding things that pique your interest and maybe some new interests as well. So Christina and Justin, I'm a big fan of what you both are up to. Thank you so much for being so generous in everything you shared, and thanks for coming here on the show today.
Thanks so much for having us. We really appreciate being on here. We were so excited.
Thanks, Brian.